how she goes. Methinks.
Many Tic Tacs later.
It's a little smoky in here. Truss is installed. I think I'll fire up the air compressor. Get my needle scaler. Yeah, and hit that weld that's on the cast there. I don't know if this is cast iron or nodular iron. Cast iron will tend to crack right there. That might still crack right there, but I wanted to tie that into the cast bit. And I might end up going all the way around the axle tube too, but not today. I'm just going to fire up that air compressor and needle scale that and take a shower and go to work. Okay, back in a minute. Okay, as you can see, I've got the bearings pressed on. I use that because I just bought one. Another alternative is to heat the bearing with a torch. Just heat the inner race. Don't get it over 300 degrees. It should expand enough for you to just drop it on. I've seen that done before. But I took the old bearing, I cut the cage off, took the bearings off, and took my die grinder and hogged this out a little bit. You can see I had to use that to press that all the way on. And you just, on the Chrysler 8.25, you just press the bearings all the way on until they bottom out. The ring gear actually didn't need to be heated up to get it put on. It fit on there. It fit on this without pressing it or heating it up to expand it. Your results may vary. I found out why I broke this bolt trying to take the ring gear off the old carrier. Those are left-handed bolts. These are left-handed threads. So it's righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. I was trying to lefty-loosey when I was actually lefty-tighty, and it freaking brokey. So I did end up taking the ring gear off once I discovered my mistake. I've never done this before, so we're learning together. I got another one of these master kits coming with a whole new set of bearings, so I can take these bearings for the pinion, take my die grinder and hog the inside of the race out so it just drops on. They don't have to be pressed on, so I can set the pinion up. Because realistically, this is probably going to go in and come out 300 or 400 times before I get it right. And having setup bearings, you can actually buy setup bearings. Like I found a set on eBay for 90 bucks, but I get a whole master kit for 70. So I'm willing to sit here for 20 minutes or so with a die grinder and hogging them out. But for right now, kit comes with some Loctite, as you can see here. I'm going to put Loctite on these, and I'm going to put these bolts in, and then I'm going to torque them to 50 foot-pounds because that's what it says to do. Those are 3/8 bolts. 50 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern, and then this will be done. Kind of lightly set it in there so it's out of the way, and then I'll bring the pinion over here and get this set up. So I'm going to start by getting these bolts in and torque down. Well, I don't know if you noticed or not, but yeah, I have a click style torque wrench. So when you reach the torque setting, it clicks, but mine doesn't do it in reverse. So I had to guess, and I'm guessing that's around 50 foot-pounds. Good enough, I suppose. This right here is just to get it out of the way in some place where it's probably not going to get broken. Probably not. So I got my die grinder with a burr on it. Take these pinion bearings, hug out the inside to get them to drop onto the pinion. And then these have been my setup bearings. And I'll just have to put a zip tie around them or something to denote that they're setup bearings. Okay, for those of you armchair mechanics, they're saying, you ruined those bearings by running them in the race dry with a die grinder. You're going to get filings and everything in it. Like, the filings are so fine that they were easily flushed out with brake clean. Having said that, these races are not going to get used at all. Like I said, I got another whole set of bearings and races coming. These will probably just go in the scrap bin over yonder. And these bearings will never be put into service. These are just here to serve as a setup bearing so that you can easily take the bearings on and off. You want to save yourself a little time and hassle, you can, like I said, you can buy the setup bearings. eBay has them. Oh, hi, how you doing? I was just contemplating whether or not I'm going to be able to put these on today. And it occurred to me that maybe you're wondering what kind of tools you need to do a job like this. Great question. Thanks for asking. It's going to require some tools. Not a whole bunch, but some. I was thinking about putting these bearing races in, but I don't think I got a race driver that's big enough. So I came out and looked. Now the biggest one I got here is a 74 millimeter. No, that's not gonna work. So I went inside and I actually spent another 20 bucks, 25 bucks, and got the right tool for the job. But I'll use these to drive the wheel bearings in. Wheel bearings, seals. These go into the end of the axle tube. Yeah, those. That's what the axle rides on. What size is that? 64 millimeter. Put that on there like so and beat the hell out of it with a hammer. Straight from the land of cheap stuff. Via the rainforest store. So I can't install the races, which means that I'm dead in the water. But so I got this bearing race installer tool, and I got another one coming. In order to use those properly, you need a hammer and claw hammer for the win. I've got a bunch of claw hammers, but then why wouldn't I? I'm a carpenter. But never hurts to have a BFH. If nothing else, you can use it to smash the piece of shit tools that you bought from the rainforest store. Don't ask me how I know. So you're going to need a way to put bearing races in. You're going to need a way to press bearings onto things and to pull bearings off of things. And of course, you saw in the last video my bearing removal tool, and this one is manufactured by Vevor. You got these clamshells. They fit along the bottom of the bearing like so. And there's a sleeve that goes over top of that. But before you put the sleeve on, you got to put this on. And that goes on there like so. That goes on there like so. Okay. That sleeve goes on there and that just holds the clamshells together. And then you take an impact driver, either a pneumatic, a plug-in electric, or cordless like I have over here, and you drive this down into the pinion, and that pulls the bearing. Like so. I told you in the last video, I think I paid about $130 for that. Actually, I paid $119 for that. And that comes with 2 different size, what would you call that? I don't know what you would call that, but 2 different sizes of these things to accommodate different bearing sizes. So you could do a Dana 30 all the way up to, I think, a Dana 80. It's a good tool to have for $100. It's good to have around. Of course, this particular unit is a Flex. This used to be the Milwaukee Killer. It's actually pretty good. I like this a lot. I bought this for taking lug nuts off the bus. It'll do it too. What else? So that's how you pull stuff off. How do you put the stuff back on? Great question. Let me show you over here. This fine piece of equipment is the cheapest 12-ton shop press that the Rainforest store has currently. I think it was 120-ish, somewhere around there. Link in the description. For some of you old school subscribers, you might remember that I had an orange 20-ton when I lived in Nevada, and I sold that because I didn't want to move it. I regret doing that. This thing is well, it's $120. You can't expect too much. It does what it's supposed to do, but it's not the highest quality piece of equipment. But if you don't have a press and you need a press, what are you going to do? You could always take it to a shop and have bearings pressed on at a mechanic shop, but you know, are they going to be able to fit you in the moment, or are you going to have to leave it there and wait 3 days? Depends how busy a mechanic is. For what it's worth, $120 seemed like a small price to pay to be able to press bearings on. Now, having said that, you don't really need to use this to press bearings onto the carrier. If you've got a torch, you know, like a map torch or a propane torch and a temperature gun, you take your torch and heat the inside of the bearing up. Try to stay away from the cage because the cage is thinner metal and will distort quickly. But if you take and just heat the inner race of the bearing, like don't go over 300 degrees, it should expand the metal enough to be able to just drop right on. Apparently it works pretty good on the carrier, or you just press them on like I did. Now the pinion, you're going to need to press the big bearing on. Well, what you need is a piece of pipe that fits over this part of the pinion to be able to press the bearing on. This is one of the sleeves that I have in my ball joint press. That fits over this, and this is the biggest piece of pipe that I have. Actually, I think this might be tubing. 2-inch tube, 3/16 wall. The inside diameter is not big enough to fit all the way down there. If I bought 2-inch pipe, it would work. But I have this sleeve, so I can use that. Use this to press against the sleeve. Now press that bearing down onto there. Bob's your uncle. If you don't want to buy a press, you take it to a shop and have them pressed on. The front bearing gets pressed on with the impact that you're going to buy, and the yoke. Oh, coincidentally, don't throw the old nut away from the old pinion. You're going to use this for your setup. Don't use your new nut because you'll destroy it. Use your old one. Measuring tools. You're going to need some measuring tools. I got this very inexpensive, but surprisingly pretty high quality. Who makes it? Doesn't even say. Stainless and hardened 6-inch veneer caliper. Digital. Yeah, I've had a couple of these. In fact, I just threw 2 of them away because they didn't work anymore. I bought from Harbor Freight. And this part of the body where the electronics are is plastic. And, you know, you'd lose the battery doors, the batteries go dead. And this is actually made out of metal, the whole thing. This is probably a MIM metal injection molded part, more than likely. I forget what I paid for this. It wasn't much. You know me, I'm a cheap bastard. I don't think I paid $20 for this. I'll have to look. I'll put a link down in the description. It was cheap. But you're going to need one of these. You're going to measure shims and stuff like that. There's not a whole lot of measuring you do on a 8 1/4, but you know, you want to measure like the shim on the back here. This shim. You know, this is a factory shim. It says 28 on it, and I wondered, does that mean 28 thousandths? Well, I had a measuring tool. I could verify. It's 28 thousandths. Of course, you're going to need regular hand tools, wrenches, sockets, ratchets. You're also going to need a torque wrench. This is a 1/2-inch torque wrench. This was made of Great Neck. I've had this for 25 years. This is a clicker type, so you set it by turning this up. There's a scale here for foot-pounds, and then on the back there's a scale for Newton meters. You select your foot-pound. Like say if you want to say you're tightening lug nuts, for example. 1/2-inch lug nuts, you torque to 110 foot-pounds, I believe. So you turn that down until you get to 110. There, 110. You take this, turn that down and lock it so it can't turn on when you're doing it. And you start ratcheting, and then when it gets to 110 foot-pounds, it goes click. You'll feel it click in here. Unfortunately, I discovered that this does not work in reverse. It only works in the clockwise rotation. It does not click in the counterclockwise rotation. I discovered that when I tightened down my ring gear. So I did it just by feel. Chemicals. I use a lot of this stuff just to get rid of oils and just to clean parts and stuff. Use a lot of brake clean. This stuff does not go very far. You can burn through a can pretty quick, and this stuff isn't cheap. But I found that the cheapest place to get fluids like oils, chemicals like brake clean, brake fluid, that kind of thing, is Walmart. And they're not paying me to say that, and it pains me to say it, but that's the cheapest game in town. And if you do a lot of oil changes like I do, it might behoove you to get your oil from Walmart. Okay, so I'm just sitting here dead in the water waiting. I've got some chemicals for my axle housing. There's a lot of surface rust on this axle housing, and I took a wire wheel and got most of the scale off of the thing. But I went ahead and bought some POR 15 metal prep, and I've got I think 4 ounces of POR 15 paint coming. POR means paint over rust. And I'm going to treat this. This is a phosphoric acid, and it leaves behind a phosphorus coating. It's a rust preventative coating, and the stuff's not cheap, but it works. It works really good for cleaning stuff like this up. So I'll go get some chip brushes and I'll wipe this thing down. I got some. What the hell is that? Purple Power. This stuff is a good degreaser. I recommend it. And then I degrease the axle with that, and then I'm going to metal prep it and get it ready for PR15 paint, and I'll just top coat it with Rattle Can Black. Probably the cheapest stuff I could find at Walmart. Can't find this at Walmart though. I'll put a link in the description for it. There's some of the tools that you'll need to do a job like this. Most of you guys that are watching this probably already have most of these tools already anyway. And don't worry, you can probably, like the seal and race installer, you can rent from like O'Reilly's. I don't think they're going to have something like this, but they might. You can ask them. These are pretty inexpensive. Of course, if you want to, you can get yourself up on the Snap It Off In You truck or the cornhole truck and pay hundreds of dollars for a torque wrench that goes beep. Or you go in the Rainforest store like most people, and I know it's all from China, I know. But you can go on there and get one that goes beep for 80 bucks. It's made by Weaver. That name sounds familiar. Where have I heard that name before? I don't know. Anyway, my point is, if you want to be like one of the cool kids that has a torque wrench that beeps at you, Weaver's got one that's bi-directional, up to 200 pounds for about 80 bucks. Or you can buy one that goes click, the old school kind, that's capable of going up to 200 pounds, bi-directional, for about 30 bucks. Ironically, the ones that are getting harder and harder to find are the old beam type that just has a long needle that points to a scale, and you turn it, and the deflection in the torque wrench will point to how many foot-pounds. Those are hard to find, believe it or don't. But for 30 bucks, you can't go wrong. That's about all I got here. So I guess I can go ahead and knock this small race in, but I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow afternoon to do the big race because I don't have a race installer big enough. Awesome. This is taking forever. See you tomorrow. Okay, quickly, because I got it cleaned up and go back. I spent too much time out here today, but I wanted to get the setup bearings. I want the pinion depth set, and I wanted to get a pattern on these gears. And I ended up having to do this about 4 times, putting it in, taking it out. So with the factory shim, the pattern was a little bit too far out on the gear set. Probably would have been fine. And then I put this 0.0185 in, and it brought it a little bit too far to the inside of the gear. So I grabbed the 2 smallest shims, and it ended up combined being a 0.0210, and I put that in, and there's my pattern on the coast. My pattern on the drive. That's with 5 thousandths backlash. Set it up a little bit tight because it's only going to loosen. I think the spec on this is 6 to 15, 5 to 15. There's a few tools that I forgot to mention in the last clip. Like that, there's a couple tools that you're going to need. One of them is a magnetic base to hold your dial indicator, and you use this to set up the backlash. And I'll show you when I set this up for the final time. And you're going to need, for the 8 1/4, and I would imagine it's the same for the Chrysler 8 3/4, is this bearing preload adjusting tool. You've got these threaded caps that go on the end of the bearing race on both sides, and that's how you set your backlash, by turning those in and out and bringing the ring gear closer to or further away from the pinion. I recommend, because these aren't very expensive, but if you're going to do this more than once, I recommend that you buy 2 of these and put 1 in each one. You waste a lot of time pulling this out, going on the other side, trying to fish that into that
hex, and it would be a hell of a lot simpler if you just had two of them. You could put one on each side. But I'll put a link in the description of this tool. So the setup bearings have served their purpose. That's these ones here. They've served their purpose. They're not going into service. They're going to get zip ties put around them with tags on them, and they're going in my junk drawer, where they'll probably lavish there for the next 20 years. And then I got to press this on with my super duper high quality professional 12-ton press. And then I can do this all over again. But that'll be tomorrow. I'll press this on before I got to go in and get cleaned up. I'll press this on, get it ready for tomorrow, and then I'll show you what I got to do the preload for this. It's probably not going to happen tomorrow because I got to wait for a tool. Oh, that's the other thing I was missing. Let's take this off real quick and put the setup bearing back on. So imagine this is the bearing that I'm going to be using. Imagine this is my new crush sleeve. That'll go on here. Then your pinion, your small pinion bearing, go on here. And then your yoke will go on here. And that's another reason why you want to save your old nut, because you want to use your old nut to drive that pinion on, to drive this bearing on. And then you want to kind of creep up on this. And what you're looking for is a preload number that is, 10 to 35 inch pounds. So I purchased this, and this is a 1/4 inch drive beam type torque wrench that measures in inch pounds. You put a load on here and it creates deflection, and it tells you how many inch pounds. You also need some kind of way to hold the yoke while you're just ramrodding that bolt on to get the pinion on and push that bearing on the pinion. So I bought this tool, this fixture tool, that allows me to put either a 3/4 or 1/2 inch drive breaker bar on. But alas, there are no provisions for a 1/4 inch drive torque wrench. So I need to get an adapter that goes from 1/4 inch drive female to 1/2 inch drive male. That's typically not an adapter that you find at the local AutoZone or O'Reilly's. I got tons of adapters that adapt from 3/8 to 1/2, 3/8 to 1/4. Got a plethora of those, but not the other way around. So back to the rainforest store I go. Story of my life. Be here tomorrow, they say. I'll believe it when I see it. And if you're going to do this in your unit has a crush sleeve, get a couple of them. Because once you over torque that, it's junk. You got to throw it away and use a new one. So I may press this in and I'll see you later. Well, I got on a roll and I buttoned all this up off camera because like I said, I got on a roll. I've already driven in the bearings, the wheel bearings and the seals on the ends. I've put the carrier in. The procedure, according to several sources on the interwebs, when you put the caps on, you tighten 1 to 10 foot-pounds and the other one just finger tight. And what I did is took my impact, my little 1/4 inch impact driver, and I just drove these down until they bottomed out. Then I used the adjustment tool to adjust the adjusters in and out to get the backlash. I got this, I think I got it set at 7 thousandths. The spec is 6 to 15. And once your backlash is set, torque these down to 100 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. And then you want to set your preload on your carrier. Before you tighten these down, you set it to 10 foot-pounds. I just snugged it with a wrench on the end of the adjustment tool. And then once these caps are torqued down, then you drive the adjusters in to 70 foot-pounds. The next step is to put the backing plates back on, and then I can put the axles back in. You might be wondering, Rick, you don't have spider gears no more. How are you going to hold your axles in if there's no cross pin to do and things and stuff? That's a great question. This limited slip differential has a port. I imagine there's some kind of cross pin in there or something. But at least there's an access port, and I already got this clip halfway out. Let me see if I can pull it out with my digits. Nope. Now usually what happens once you get the tension off this, it slips off the snap ring pliers and goes shooting across the room. And look at that, I got it out. I didn't even lose it, for the love of Pete. And I think, does that turn out? I don't know. Maybe it just lifts out. Yep, it just lifts out. And would you look at that? Let me get some light on the subject here. There's something in there. A puck of sorts. Oh, look at that. That's what holds your axles apart so that the C-clips can do their thing. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna put the back plates on and then get the axles in.
let's take a look at what I've done here. Now, when I originally did the Liberty brakes, I used replacement Liberty factory, and they're not factory, but the replacement alternative. Now, the factory Liberty flexible hoses that come off the caliper had a piece of hard line attached to them. And me not paying attention, I just took some dikes and I cut that hard line portion, rendering those lines useless, even though I paid for them. So I got these replacements, and they don't have the hard line on them. And, you know, obviously there's length issues here. Now, you remember the spring goes here. And the way I had this set up before I took the axle out was I took and welded the mounting tab on top of the spring plate. Well, and I had the hose coming over the top. Well, if I'd have flexed this thing out to actually make the bump stops work, the bump stop would have hit the brake line, broke the brake line. As it was, I already had issues because it was when I first did this, I had this end unsupported and it would break. It broke the brake line twice right here at the flare nut. It would fracture the line right there. Well, I bought these universal braided lines, and the way I have them routed, they're not going to interfere with the bump stop. They're not going to interfere with the spring or the spring plate, because the spring plate's going to be up here and everything's going to go under. So if I have to take this thing off, I don't have to unhook the brake lines to do it. And then, of course, I welded this truss on and removed the ability to put the brake line over the top of the pumpkin here. I welded those holes in that held the bracket that held the brake line in place over on this end. And I welded these aftermarket tabs. I put those in. I've got my brake lines, new banjo bolts, and I attached it to the back side or the front side, depending on which side of the vehicle you're looking at. I attached it to the truss. Isn't that pretty? So now all I got to do is put it back in. I'll just put it back in. Try to do that while scratching the paint. It's pretty. It's a good looking axle. All right, I guess I'll go throw it back in. Well, as you can see, the rear axle's back in, and I had to take it up to the dealership to have it safetied for my annual inspection for registration renewal. And it's a mile up the road and a mile back, and that's not really a good test for whether or not I did things right, but I'm pretty confident at this point. I'm looking forward to doing a few more miles and break it in and take that pan off and to see how that oil looks. But alas, it's going to have to wait a couple of days because, as you can see, the front axle's not in the truck no more. It's over here, disassembled on the workbench. That'll be the subject of another video. So until next time, you have fun, stay safe, shoot straight, keep powder dry, and have a splendid day. I gotta go to work. We'll see you next time. Bye.